Plus, a reporting controversy that consumed Twitter this week. It involved Tucker Carlson, Libs of TikTok, and a Washington Post expose. The reporter, Taylor Lorenz, is next. Arrested for threatening the dictionary. I know it sounds like a bad joke, but it's very real. This week, a man in California charged with allegedly threatening Merriam-Webster over gender definitions. Now, this charge is an extreme example of what's happening across the USA. A brewing backlash to LGBTQ equality, fueled by right-wing media outlets. Attacks on gay and transgender Americans are being filtered through the phrase parents' rights. And let's be clear, parents are right to care about what their children are learning. Of course they are. But let's also be honest that there's an undercurrent of homophobia to some of the commentary. As CNN's Sarah Murray put it, quote, GOP culture warriors are having a moment at the expense of transgender kids. The right-wing Twitter account Libs of TikTok has been at the center of this political storm. The account reposts videos of LGBTQ TikTok users and progressive educators, highlighting what they say about gender identity, labeling some of them as predators and groomers. This Twitter account's been a bottomless well of material for the likes of Fox, advancing a narrative that liberals are hurting kids. So Washington Post columnist Taylor Lorenz wanted to write about the account and identify the influencer running it. Her new story, naming Kaya Raichik as the Twitterer, has been blasted by the right, with critics slamming Lorenz's reporting practices, questioning her ethics. So let's dig into it. I put the questions straight to Lorenz, and here's what she said.
Yeah, well, Libs of TikTok has been on my radar for a minute. I remember when Joe Rogan started promoting it last August. So I started following the account and looking into it, and I noticed that it was just gaining more and more traction. Like more and more high profile people were retweeting it, engaging with it. And then earlier this year, when all of this groomer discourse really took hold, I started really, I was like, I got to find out who's behind this account and like what the deal is with this account, because it was this thing where like the account would post a video, and within 24 hours, sometimes it would be on Fox News or it would be written up in the whole right-wing media. And it was just this like feeding ground.
Were you always determined to identify the person? Was that like the most important part of the story for you?
It wasn't well, I would say it was equally important with describing the power that this account has. I think it's rare to see an account gain so much prominence so quickly and be shaping these narratives in such an effective way, especially against trans people. My story was kind of long, but I really wanted to make the case like why this account mattered. And I think it's incredibly important, as someone that covers the influencer industry, to know who is exerting influence in this way. I mean, for all we knew, this could have been a foreign actor, right? Or someone we just didn't know. And so I thought, hey, look, this account has massive power, massive influence. This woman is basically on an entire right-wing media tour. She gave interviews to the New York Post, Tucker, all of that, and registered as a media company, registered a trademark. So yeah, I thought it was quite important and in the public interest to find out who was running it.
So there are several arguments against your article. One is that this person's identity was simply not newsworthy. That it doesn't matter who this anonymous conservative woman is, and that you naming her is targeting her, trying to hurt her. What do you say to those folks?
Well, first of all, this woman is targeting LGBTQ folks. I mean, she brags about getting multiple teachers fired. The entire goal of the account is to direct hate to trans and LGBTQ people. She said that she doesn't believe gay people who come out should be allowed to teach children. She attacked the Trevor Project, calling it a groomer organization. So I don't know what she's talking about in that sense.
But when you say it exists to attack LGBTQ, there are a lot of conservative parents, or just a lot of parents in the United States, that are worried about what their kids are learning. So you say it's all about an attack?
Wait, Brian. Well, I mean, I think you can have concern about what your children are learning in school and not follow an LGBTQ hate account that's the whole goal is to get trans and LGBTQ people sort of excluded from public life and drive these very harmful narratives around trans people. I mean, those are two very, 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 very different things, right? She's also talked about mobilizing her base to run for local school boards and is collecting email lists, which 100% are going to be used for political purposes. So This is a political force. This is an influential media force. The idea that this woman is not newsworthy is quite nonsense. You know what I mean? I cover influencers for a living, and I'm telling you, this woman is more influential than a lot of people that I cover. So it's very important. The right will make those arguments because they don't want scrutiny.
You think that's a very blunt statement for a Washington Post reporter to make. They just don't want scrutiny. They just don't want people.
Yeah, they don't. I think powerful people do not want scrutiny. They want to be able to discredit the media so that they can operate with impunity. And, case in point, this woman deleted thousands of tweets the day that my article came out because she realized that she was going to be under, increased scrutiny, and that she could get, that people were really going to start looking at her account. I think that's a good thing. I think we should scrutinize anyone that has power in this country, anyone that's influencing politics and legislation and public sentiment in the media. Those figures are important to look at.
Hey, I appreciate that you're willing to talk about this and you're willing to take on the scrutiny as someone covering this. So here's the next one. The conservative supporters of this account said you were doxing the person. You're doxing them. So can you tell us how you actually define doxing and the difference between doxing and real reporting?
Yeah, of course. Well, the word doxing has been so devalued, and it just kind of is a buzzword now in the right-wing media. Doxing means revealing highly, highly personal, non-public information with the goal of harassment or sort of destroying someone's life. We absolutely did not reveal any personal information about this woman at all, remotely. And, I know that sometimes reporting practices can seem foreign to people that aren't familiar with journalism, but this was very by the book and very benign. And the thing is, the right-wing media will lie, right? They kind of just will spin up these narratives. The goal is to sow doubt and to discredit journalism. And that is their agenda. And I think we need to be prepared for that and recognize those things for what it is. I mean, Brian, so much of what I do is try and educate people about the mechanics of these online outrage cycles and harassment, and sort of educate news organizations on how to cover it and how to understand bad faith attacks. And so I think it's really important as, us members of the media who cover media to recognize bad faith attacks when they're levied.
Well, yeah, here's the thing, Taylor. Let's take away Libs of TikTok as the example. Anytime you have cherry picking going on, highlighting, one tribe against another tribe, it just feels like the worst of the internet's toxicity. And frankly, I read your story and I wonder, how do we get out of this cycle of just worsening and worsening toxicity?
Yeah, well, I think we need to look to reputable news organizations that are not driven by outrage. I think when you think about the future of media, a lot of it is moving towards these accounts that are driven for social media attention, whether it's a YouTube account or an Instagram or a TikTok or Twitter. And I think we need to, take a step back and make sure we know who we're getting our news from, make sure that things are framed correctly, and not just buy into things that, feed into the point of views that we already have, if that makes sense.
It totally does. I can't wait to see what you're working on next. It seems like every story you write gets a lot of attention.
Well, I try and do stories that other people aren't doing, so thanks.
Hear more from Lorenz on our Reliable Sources podcast.